we had an excellent speaker in January. Her name was Anna Jace on IVF technology and so forth. That video has now been posted. If it's a topic of interest to you, it's on our website, which is Catholic Citizens TV, the YouTube channel, Catholic Citizens TV. And it's already gotten 80 views. It's only been up for about a week or two. So that YouTube site, by the way, is continuing to attract a lot of attention to us, which I'm very grateful for. I wanted to mention, at our 2022 annual dinner, we had Kevin Roberts of the Heritage Foundation. He has become sort of a controversial figure, or I should say the Heritage Foundation has become a very controversial figure for their so-called Project 2025. And I recommend his talk to you that he gave at that banquet, talking about, and he's a very devout Catholic, talking about how his Catholicism was kind of driving what they're doing at the Heritage Center. Not trying to convert people exactly, but very much aligned with our faith. So I recommend that video to you as well. And regarding our website, as I've said many times before, the whole point of the website is to give you information to help you deal with issues that we're contending with as Catholics. This week, the whole thing, the big issue was immigration, the Pope's letter about immigration, reaction to that, and so forth. I again recommend that to you. That's why we have these websites, as I said, to give you information and to help you understand issues that in your day-to-day life you might be confronted with or be interested in talking to somebody about. As usual, in my view, the words that the Pope actually used were not that radical, but they're being construed because of the way he talks, the ambiguity that he tends to generate. Depending on your point of view, you can construe it one way or another, but you need to understand that. And there's a lot of very good commentary this week on that letter and the whole immigration issue, and of course J.D. Vance and the back and forth there. And I also, I don't think Brian Birch has been confirmed yet as the ambassador to the Vatican, but that's going to be something very interesting to watch also. Brian Birch, of course, is the creator of Catholic Vote. He was also a speaker at one of our luncheons a couple of years ago. Just done excellent work. And the president basically attributes his success among Catholics as compared to prior years to Brian Birch. And so we're hoping that Brian Birch and the Pope get to know each other. Okay. I also want to mention, I just saw this, maybe many of you already know this. This year's Illinois March for Life is on March 25th. I've been going to that, well, me and my family have gone to the one in Washington for years, and started to go to the one now in Illinois. And every year it's gotten bigger. And the thing that will strike you immediately, of course, is the youth of the participants. But every year it's gotten bigger. Last year was quite substantial, and if you're at all interested, or if you know people who might make that trek, I strongly recommend you do it. Politicians notice the numbers, and the larger the group, the more timid they're going to get in Illinois doing what they're trying to do, in my opinion. All right. We still don't have a new chaplain. If anyone knows of a good priest that would like to be a chaplain for us, we'd be happy to hear about it. But when we had Father Finelli, we always started with the Angelus, so I'd like to start with the Angelus today. The angel of the Lord declared unto Mary, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary,
Mother of God, pray for us sinners. Behold the handmaid of the Lord. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of
And the Word was made flesh. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Pray for us, O Holy Mother of God. Let us pray. Pour forth, we beseech you, O Lord, your grace into our hearts, that we, to whom the incarnation of Christ, your Son, was made known by the message of an angel, may by his passion and cross be brought to the glory of his resurrection, through the same Christ our Lord. Amen. Bless us, O Lord, in these thy gifts, which we are about to receive from thy bounty, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you. Okay, I just went into the kitchen to push the dessert. I don't know why we don't have that, but it's coming. But we're not gonna wait. We're gonna proceed with our speaker, and when the dessert comes, enjoy it. That's not a problem at all. Our speaker this month is John Severance, who describes himself as a seasoned marketing strategist and a visionary communicator. And I suspect we'll decide for ourselves after this presentation. On the topic of classical education, he got very involved with Father Fessio out in San Francisco, University of San Francisco, and that piqued his interest in this topic. And I think that's largely where he developed his interest in it, that he still pursues vigorously today. So anyway, without further ado, I'll just introduce you. Come on up, John. Thank you.
I'm going to talk about the Renaissance in Catholic education that will save our country, and I really do believe strongly that education is where the battleground has been had and where the victory is going to be had as well. So let me just get into it. So why are we talking about education? I mean, I don't know if any of you here are looking to send your children, picking out a school, a pre-K program, maybe a few. Maybe looking for a cause to fund. That's always a good thing. But as I said, the reason to talk about education really is because that's where the battle for the American soul, and really it's a worldwide movement, that's where it's been waged. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and I would come home from school, and often there would be a gathering in my living room. I'm like, what's going on? And then I would learn from one of my siblings, like, you know, this is an abortion conversation, or, you know, we've gathered a bunch of people here to talk about communism coming into America. So I was raised on a steady diet of this kind of stuff. I knew full well what was going on behind the scenes. And my parents carefully picked out schools for me. In fact, I had to go all the way to California, get on an airplane to go to high school, because they didn't have the options in Phoenix that were right. So my mother was a school founder, and I've been very involved in various educational movements. I'm one of the founding, not members, but founding families of Chesterton Academy of the Holy Family. Madonna's on the board with me. Rennie there and his wife Julie are co-founders. And I've put all my kids through a classical education. So it's an important topic, I think. So let me just talk a little bit about, I'm sure I know this particular crowd here is probably well versed in this topic, but you know, there's definitely been a very public, documented, it's not conspiracy, there's been a takeover of the educational system in the US. And the term that was used is the Long March. I don't know who used that, but it's widely used, and that's also the same term that Mao Zedong used when he took over China, right? And that's sort of what my parents, to go back to that story, my parents were always telling me that if America is going to be ever overtaken by the Communist Party or by some form of leftism or Marxism, it's not going to be a military strategy. It's going to be a cultural revolution, right? So I'm going to just read a quote here because it gives some context to what's happened to the school system. This is by a gentleman named Martin Cothran, and he's an advocate of classical education. He's coming out with a book that's going to come out soon, The Rise and Fall of Progressive Education. So he says here, the progressive education movement had its origins in two impulses that came to dominate schools in the early 20th century. The first was a utilitarian vocationalism that attempted to transform schools into glorified job training centers to fit children into the industrial and agricultural economy. And the second was a romantic progressivism that sought to harness the schools to help realize a utopian vision of society. So I'm going to unpack that a little bit. So, people ask me all the time, what's this classical education thing and how new is it? Like, basically it was education up until it was revolutionized, right? Some of the chief person that re-architected education, I'm sure you all know who this person is, John Dewey. I'll kind of make this point now, and I have a slide on it, so I'll probably skip it when I get to it, but G.K. Chesterton said that revolutionaries are always right about what's wrong. The problem is they're always wrong about what's right. So when you look at the Industrial Revolution and you look at people like Dewey, he had some good ideas, right? So there was a limit to intellectual formation, and that should be accompanied by a practical formation, right? And I think none of us want shop class to be out of school, right? Or we don't want to be pure academics. So there was a lot of, I think, initial good motivation in what a lot of these people were pushing. But some of his philosophy then, like Chesterton said, they're wrong about what's right. So, their prescriptive measures really destroyed education. So just a few quotes I think make him, give a little bit more context. Give pupils something to do, not something to learn. There's a very, very sort of bias against that academic knowledge has no inherent value, right? And if we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow. So this sort of outlook that anything that's come before us is only semi-useful to what's coming ahead, right? So why learn about the 18th century? How do you bring that into a factory of the 20th century? Then we kind of moved into the 60s, and this was like early 1900s, John Dewey. And then we got into another social movement in education, and that's obviously came with the civil rights revolution, the sexual revolution. And again, there was some good aspect to those movements. I don't think we'd want to go backwards in some ways, right? But education was really the goal, the telos of education moved from inquiry to activism, right? Schools were looked at as places of transformation, as ways that you could shape minds, shape souls, change culture, right? So we went from the civil rights activism to critical race theory, which is sort of the modern thinking on that topic, to critical identity theory, and then critical gender theory, which is kind of dominant right now. I'm sure we've all followed the news on that. Now, thank God, there's some backlash, right? There's some reversal of some of these. So Bill Ayers, I just learned today, he's a Glen Ellen boy. He's local. I knew he's from Chicago, but I didn't know he's from the neighborhood directly to the west of Lombard, where I live. And so I want to read this quote, because I think it's really formative. It's a little bit long, so sorry about that. The drama of education is always a narrative of transformation. Act 1 is life as we find it, the given, the known, the received, the settled, and the status quo. Act 2 is the fireworks, the moment of upheaval and dissonance, the experience of discovery and surprise, the energy of remodeling and refashioning. Act 3 is the achievement of an altered angle of regard, new ways of knowing and behaving, a new way of seeing and being, right? So, when you're in a class, you're learning about, let's say, issues in the past, injustices, you began to have teachers then advocating to make change now, right? Rather than just learn history. So he's really famous for training teachers to be activists, right? When you have the students' attention, and you could manipulate any kind of story, and it happens, right? You can then win their hearts, right? So the question is, okay, did Catholic schools decline as well, right? Were they immune to these progressive movements? And sadly, the answer is no, right? So I think a lot of people would give Catholic schools an F on a report card, and I'll get to that on the next slide. So if you just look at the number of students that have been educated by Catholic institutions, this is primary and secondary, does not include college. So in 1960, there were about 5.3 million students in Catholic schools. Today there's 1.7, so it's about a 70% drop in enrollment. There's also 50% fewer schools today than there were in the 60s, right? And that's a report from the National Catholic Education Association, which is very neutral, if not a little bit left-leaning. The only recent growth, they were super stoked about a 0.03 growth. It's all on pre-K. Pre-K enrollment's up. If you look at why choose a Catholic school, I think I kind of agree with a lot of people here. It's high tuition, low differentiation. Right, so Catholic school isn't really, most Catholic schools, not all, but most, aren't altogether that different from a public school. So why the heck pay $18,000, $25,000? In fact, public schools have more amenities, better teachers, better sports teams. So if you're going to do anything, and you kind of want an alternative, why not just go for a charter school? Why not move to Arizona or Colorado, right? And then you get like a free Catholic education. I don't know if many of you have heard of Great Hearts out of Arizona. I think it's the largest classical, if not maybe charter school movement in the country. You go there, like everybody's wearing a crucifix. It's like a covert Catholic school. They can't teach religion, but they can teach Aquinas. And so there's a lot of energy right now in the charter school movement. So the good news here is that every age of decline is followed by a renaissance, right? It's just cyclical. We live in a cyclical world, right? And today, one of the signs of hope is the classical education movement. So here's a recent report from summer from the Heritage Foundation, Classical Schools in America, a Movement of Hope. And I hope all of you have heard some form of that version, but there's a lot of buzz right now about classical education. If you look at the numbers of classical schools, so today there's nearly 700,000 schools, or co-ops, or even like home schools that are considered classical. Catholics we're there, 60,000, that's not bad. That's enrollment, that's not schools. It'd be great if it were schools. And then by 2035, there's projected to be 1.4 million students enrolled in some form of a classical school, right? And what you have right now, if you look at the data by new Catholic schools, it's gonna look not that great, but a lot of schools are converting to a classical model. So I'll get to Chesterton in a bit, but just in Minneapolis, of the top 10 private Catholic schools, here's where you can fact check me, Brenny, heard this in summer, 3 have gone classical, 3 of the top 10, right? Following in the wake of an upstart Chesterton Academy in that. So people see the value in the model. So what's driving this? A number of things. So these I pulled from the Heritage Foundation. Really, one way, it's kind of an anti-tech movement, right? A lot of these schools have iPads, they're doing constant work on homework, and there's a lot of people say, what about reading a book? What about sitting on the couch and reading, right? Another is they want objective truth. They're sick of relativism that's being taught in schools. And they want moral character, not self-esteem character, not teachers saying, whatever you think, you're amazing, that's a great thought. They're not challenging these kids to develop their own character in many cases, right? It's also a grassroots movement. So it's in large part that 700,000 students that are being taught and the 1.3 million about to be taught in a bit here, it's largely a parent-driven movement. And I was speaking to a number of people last week about this. So the story that I was told is that with school choice, parents said, heck, I could start a school. I don't need to, even be an educator. And I can get a grant, I can start a school, and then that has encouraged other parents to start schools. The Chesterton Schools Network is also a parent-driven. You have 2 parents here, Julie and Brenny. They started the school because they wanted to educate Brenner right there, right? And then thank God they did, right? So it's emboldened by school choice and a rediscovery of the faith, a return to the faith, and it's something that's been accessible to everyone. This is not some type of elite Oxford in America type thing, where you have to have a lot of money to go to school. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Chesterton Schools Network. I mentioned that already. I am on the board. I've sent 4 of my kids through the program. That's my daughter Ava here on your far right. This was a school network founded by Dale Ahlquist. He's a G.K. Chesterton expert. A lot of his books are published by Father Fessio's Ignatius Press. So since 2008, when the first ever Chesterton Academy was founded in Minneapolis, Minnesota, there's now 62 Chesterton Academies in the country, actually some international as well. Ours is called Chesterton Academy of the Holy Family in Lisle, and our school is thriving. And I think, Brenny, maybe is it going to be up more than 100 schools kind of in the next 2 to 3 years?
By 2026, it'll be 92 schools.
92 schools, right? Dale accidentally started this network. He didn't mean to. He just started one school, and then a couple other people. Like I said, it's a parent-driven movement. Like, hey, what did you do? How did you start it? Like, I started it with my wife. Here's how you do it. And now there's going to be soon more than 90 schools that have come into this network. So if you look at right now, there are about 2,500 students being educated across the network at any given time. So that's sizable, right? There's about 1,200 alumni. I'm sure this number can be, these numbers are a couple years old, and more than 20 vocations. So I'm gonna play a video right now. Everhouse, my agency, we created this video a year ago. I just think it's cool to watch. But this is a video about, I think it captures the heart of the classical education movement and restoring Catholic education. Let me just play this here.
Where are you going to send your children to high school? It's probably the most important decision you'll ever make. It's the formation that takes place at that key moment in their lives that will set the course for eternity. We were looking for a high school for our own children, and we wanted a school that had a rigorous integrated curriculum that was fully and faithfully Catholic and that was affordable. And that school didn't exist. So we started one. We are leading a renewal in education. We're recapturing what Catholic education was supposed to be.
One of the key hallmarks of a Chesterton Academy is the integrated curriculum. They're reading the greatest literature of all time. They're studying the history of the world, the history of our moment and how we got here. They're studying the intricacies of math and science and seeing how the world around them really works. They're invited to think about these great ideas, these ideas about what it means to be a human being, what it means to live in the world in which we are right now. And then they're invited to articulate their thoughts in a coherent, a persuasive, and a charitable manner, and to have that discussion and that dialogue within the classroom.
The emphasis on the arts is one of the things that sets a Chesterton Academy apart from other schools. We require 4 years of fine arts, 4 years of music, and 3 years of drama.
They're taught to perform, they're taught to act on stage, they're taught how to sing, how to paint, how to dance, and all of these are really crucial for a student's whole formation as a human being.
But one of the things that really separates Chesterton Academy is a particular approach to the spiritual side of formation. Now, part of that is the sacramental life. There is daily Mass, there are opportunities for confessions. But more than that, there's a concerted effort to help the students connect the rich theology they get from their classes to what's going on in their hearts. How to integrate their faith, to integrate the Catholic vision with their ordinary lives.
When we found out about Chesterton Academy, we were just blown away. My son, Matthew, he literally read the brochure from the beginning to the end when he got a hold of it. And he just looked at me and said, "Mom, I need to go to this school. This is where I want to go to school."
Chesterton started with just a handful of students right here in this church. And now what we have is that the Holy Spirit has multiplied that across the country and even across the globe as Chesterton Academies are starting in other countries.
One of the things I love about Chesterton Academy is just the life and the joy that our students have as you walk through the hallways, as you see them interact with each other.
And there's this particular goodness in all of them.
There's something here that's happening that you didn't think was possible, but you're seeing it incarnate before you.
What's happening now is a true rebirth in Catholic education.
This is becoming the seedbed of renewing the culture.
These wonderful students at Chesterton Academy are our hope for the future.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so you see, my firm made that video there, and Joe here has helped me on some Chesterton videos in the past. Great filmmaker, right there behind the camera. And I've interviewed probably, I would say, 150 to 200 people in the past several years. Students, teachers, founders, Dale, everybody. So I become kind of the go-to guy to ask all the questions. You know, what is a classical school? Why do it? All that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna kind of just end here with some of the questions I get real quick, and then someone warn me when I'm approaching 30 minutes. So the common question I get is, what is a classical education? Like, I know it's growing, it sounds good, a movement of hope, that was a great video, but what really is it? Is this some kind of weird thing? And this is usually what people think when they think of a classical education, right? So one answer is it's a pedagogy, right? So they call it the trivium. After that, there's a quadrivium, but it's a way of educating, right? That's like basically what was in place before we changed it with Dewey and others, right? So the grammar stage, that's focusing on basic facts and figures, core knowledge. The logic stage, trying to understand it, synthesize, reason about it, and then the rhetorical stage, right? You develop your own point of view, you express it, right? Very, very common, form of education. Another way to answer it is we read the great books. So we read Dante, Aristotle, Aquinas, Augustine, etc. The books, not books about those books, right? So the greatest questions, why read those books? It's the greatest questions ever asked by the greatest minds, right, that have ever asked them, right? And not just minds, hearts. There's not just intellectual content, right? Another answer to the question is we focus on moral virtue. So here's my daughter there behind the Catechism of the Catholic Church. They read here, and this is again Chesterton Academy. You got Augustine, you got Dante, and you got the Catholic Church, right? So it's really trying to inculcate a sense of morality and courage and the virtues and ethics into these young people. Socratic, this is actually my favorite part. So instead of just sitting, and it happens, but in general, instead of sitting in a classroom taking notes while the teacher shows a PowerPoint like I'm doing, it's dialogue. The teacher is just there to facilitate the students really learning for themselves. Steve shared a story. Steve is Director of Development at Chesterton. How he brought a donor in, and the donor saw the kids dialoguing. He's like, wow, that's what we do in the business world. You never see this. This is incredibly valuable. It's also, as you saw from the video, it's a well-rounded education. So it includes dancing, it includes singing, it includes art, it includes drama, and then of course it includes, at least our school, rugby. Because you have to have a rugby program if you're truly classical school. So I wrote my own definition because I've been thinking about this a lot. I get asked this question a lot. So this is the way I normally answer it. If someone asks me what's a classical education, my answer is it's an education of the human person about the human experience. So if you think about it, kind of like what Dewey and those guys are trying to get to, right? It's not just you're learning a bunch of facts, you're reflecting on the human experience. There's got to be something there that you respond to, other than just taking a quiz or taking a test, right? And then it teaches us the operating system of the human soul. So if you want to look for a practical value, I think that's very practical. If you look at a modern education model, and this is not every modern school. I mean, there's a lot of great schools. There's classical schools that don't do it right. There's modern schools that are full of amazing teachers, right? I'm looking at here's more a pedagogical thought here. So modern school, the goal is information. Classical school, the goal is formation. Moderns find your truth, and classical would be objective reality. Self-expression, self-understanding. Career, character. Electives over a comprehensive integrated curriculum. Note-taking, dialogue. What to think and how to think, and then ultimately like job training and soul training, right? I think it's both. I don't think that you like if you look back at the model, you have to learn information, right? There, in a way, you do find your own truth, not in a relativism sense, but you find things you care about in a ways that you see them, right? In a ways that you address them, and of course, you do want to express yourself. That's the whole third part of the trivia, right? So I think there's a lot of thought about what model is right, what model got hijacked, but there's a lot of wisdom, ancient wisdom, in going back to the classical model that doesn't eschew anything about modern education. So another question I get is, isn't this just a bunch of old stuff? So my response to that is, I stole this from Newman. Well, this isn't his quote, but classical education is a journey of progress, like a river that begins as a small stream and gathers strength, depth, and wisdom as it moves towards the fullness of truth, right? We're in a progression of thinkers, right? We're in like if you saw a rugby team from the 1960s and you're the 2025 class, you feel connected to that. You feel like you're carrying on a tradition, right? It's building on something in the past. That's the Newman quote. I'll just read it because I love it. The history of a philosophy or belief is more equable and pure and stronger when its bed has become deep and broad and full. That's from his development of doctrine essay. So this isn't like old stuff. This is like our like older brothers coming before us, almost passing us the baton and saying, okay, now you figure out humanity, right? We'll share what we learned, but obviously you're living in 2025 and there's new stuff, right? So before Chesterton calls it the democracy of the dead. What is its value today? So I think another assumption that's not true about classical education is that it doesn't have any practical value. It's just a book club, so to speak, right? But what is the goal, right? The goal of this education, you want to cultivate great teachers and thinkers, right? You study science, and it's not just a literature model, right? But you want to advance medicine, engineering, but you want to do it ethically, right? You want to form principled leaders and sound economies, virtuous government. You want to have a truth in the public discourse, strengthen the human and cultural foundations in the societies that we live in, deepen spiritual and intellectual formation, and then revive beauty, harmony, and meaning in creative expression, right? So it's really all about forming a virtuous society. It's not just some kind of academic class. I think maybe class 6 departments in colleges is what a lot of people think about. But all these ideas and all these great books were put into action. The U.S. government, the Constitution, right? Is it a Catholic thing? It seems more like a evangelical thing. But if you think about the Catholic Church, we're the ones that originally preserved and advanced classical learning after the fall of Rome, right? Our monasteries are the ones that preserved and rewrote the classical text, right? They didn't get lost in oblivion. Aquinas is the one that basically Christianized Plato and Aristotle, right? And medieval universities developed really the first beginnings of the classical model. So it's very much a Catholic thing, and it's very, very appropriate that Catholic schools are the ones that are reviving it, along with their evangelical and secular friends here. Okay, so can I get a real job? Often it comes down to that, and this is more a question about a college liberal arts major than it is about a classical primary or secondary school. But I get that all the time. So this is the story I tell. Here's kind of the stereotype of a liberal arts major. I'm an English major, so this would be me, right? I'm useless. There's not going to be any good jobs for me. Why did I read Shakespeare? Good luck at Starbucks. All that kind of stuff, right? We're moving into a STEM dominant world. So liberal arts get fewer jobs, have lower wages when they get those fewer jobs, have impractical skills that have no real value. And the future, again, it's a STEM future. So there's a lot of really bad thinking in that. If you look at it from several different angles, so let's just look at jobs, fewer jobs. So this is from a couple years ago. This is how many software developers that Facebook was looking on a given day. I don't have it here. It's from a Forbes article. And this is how many people they were looking to hire on that very same day in their business dev. It's not a STEM pool of talent there. This is Uber. So at one point, on one day, they were looking to hire 168 engineers, but they were also looking for 127 people they called brand ambassadors, partner support reps, operation wranglers. Again, these are not STEM careers. If you look at a STEM skill, I'm not anti-STEM at all. I'm just saying, I'm talking about the kind of the mindset that it's STEM or STEM only. It's like STEM or bust, right? So technical skills are losing value, especially with AI and machine learning. So the average lifespan of a technical skill is about 3 to 5 years, right? You just learn another technical skill. That's one way to deal with it. But if you look at this report, this is from the Association of American Colleges and Universities, 93% of employers agree that more important than your undergraduate major is the ability to think critically, communicate clearly, and solve complex problems. So I learned this when I moved from San Francisco to Chicago, and I applied to a job at Experian in Schaumburg. And I applied for a product marketing job, and this lovely woman here, Rachel Klein, hired me, a good friend of mine. And when she hired me, my first day in, she called me into her office, and she said, "I want to tell you why I hired you, and I want to tell you that I only interviewed you." I'm like, oh, cool. I had no background in credit data or product marketing. And English Lit didn't train me for that either. She goes, "I saw that you went to the St. Ignatius Institute Great Books program. And I thought, if you can understand Plato and Aristotle, then you're going to have no trouble with the stuff I'm going to give you to understand." So I would, as Kevin said, I went to the St. Ignatius Institute, really the preeminent Great Books program in the country that then later was shut down. That was founded by Father Fessio, a new bio out on him in Ignatius Press. And this is sort of a picture of what Rachel and I do for a living. I've worked with Rachel on and off over various years. We still work together. And we basically take disorganization and we synthesize it. We take data points, research, foggy stuff, and we bring clarity to it. And so if you think about it, how did my great books, English Lit, liberal arts, SII, whatever you want to call it, degree prepare me for that, right? So as you heard Dale say in that video, it's an integrated model. So a great books program or a classical program, they study in chronological order and they study the same time periods across disciplines. So if you're in the Middle Ages in history, you're in the Middle Ages in philosophy, in the Middle Ages in art, and Middle Ages in literature. And you're looking at Middle Age forms of government, medieval, not Middle Age. You're looking at economies from that time period and you're synthesizing different viewpoints. Well, someone said we should move in this direction and someone said we should move in that direction, and what direction was right or wrong. So there's a lot of synthesis, and this is where the Socratic dialogue part of the education comes in. People are talking through these. So if you look at a good business manager today, you need to have something similar: sales, marketing, finance, development, HR. These are all the types of things I need to synthesize on a daily basis. If you look at another aspect of modern business, it's very conversational. Most decisions are made in meetings in conversation. So here's a picture of what looks like a standard kind of Socratic discussion in a classroom, and here's a picture of a business meeting that I'm in all the time. We got sticky notes, so we got more color in our world now. If you look at, these are some photos of there's Rachel here in the bottom. So you can see, it's kind of the ability to synthesize, to comprehend, to talk, to look at something from different perspectives is really what the best people in business do, right? On the management side, I'm not talking about like the engineering side. If you look at this report from the World Economic Forum, this is very surprising to a lot of people. These are the top 10 skills that are in demand right now, in order: analytical thinking and innovation, active learning and learning strategies, complex problem solving, critical thinking and analysis, creativity, originality, and initiative, leadership and social influence. Okay, here's the first mention of tech: technology use, monitoring, and control, technology design and programming, and then we're back to resilience, stress tolerance, and flexibility, reasoning, problem solving, and ideation. So, I mean, this is exactly what a great books, classical, liberal arts person can bring to the table. A lot of people think like, okay, but is that that's nice that the World Economic Forum sent that. So I like to include this job description. So this is a company called Duarte, and they're probably the #1 presentation company in the world. They write speeches for presidents. They do presentations for CEOs. So this is from their job description, and I think it can almost read like a job ad for a classical teacher. So this is what they're looking for. They want someone that can uncover essential truths. They want someone who can make the complex simple and the invisible visible. They want a process thinker. They want an intellectual acrobat and a lyrical heavy lifter. That's my favorite line. Who can deliver idea after idea long after everyone else has run dry. They want someone who can take command of a meeting, persuasive communicator, analytically convincing and emotionally compelling, right? Think about that. You're reading literature, you're doing philosophy, right? You're dancing, you're singing. And I'll just tell one story real quick, because I think sometimes people say, I don't have a question here, but why do the fine arts? So I was at an agency, and at an agency you always have the staff, and then you have the administrative staff that books your travel and does things like that. And we were dry rehearsing for a big new business pitch, and one of the women, Ruth Fairman, she said, can I give you some advice on how to act? Because pitching is a kind of form of acting, and she got up and she actually took over someone's pitch and did the pitch, and then we actually had her do the pitch the next day. And then we realized, wow, people with a drama degree, you want them in new business meetings. It's a performance, right? So just two quick quotes. The former founder of Slack, common business tool. So he was a philosophy major. Philosophy taught me two things. I learned how to write really clearly. I learned how to follow an argument all the way down, which is invaluable in running meetings. So just so you're hearing kind of the echo in the business world. So So I'm going to skip this. I'm going to kind of move here to the final slides here. But as the title slide said, can it save our culture? Can it even do more than just make for a pretty smart, person in a business meeting? So, I mean, there's no contesting this, that, we're in a world now, maybe not our kids, but still our kids are in this culture. They're adrift in a culture that's more confused and fragile than ever. Confused, we don't know what's right or wrong. Fragile, we can't even leave our bedrooms, right? Mother Teresa saw this, and when she went to New York City, and she said that the spiritual poverty that she saw in New York was worse than the material poverty that she was dealing with in India and around the world. This is not her quote, but modern society has more wealth, more technology, more comfort than ever before, yet many, not all, but many people are more anxious, lost, and despairing than in any previous generation. I mean, I don't know if that's fully true, because I'm sure times weren't always good when your kids could get kidnapped and enslaved in the Middle Ages, but I think we'd all agree that people are suffering. So if you look at the world now as a missionary field, and if you look at in great books, classical graduates, you just saw there's 2,500 kids. They're Chesterton alone, one network, a small one in the whole scheme of things, is graduating these kids in the thousands, tens of thousands every year. If you look at the missionary field, the culture as a missionary field that they're about to go into, and they want a calling, well, there's a lot, right? Do you want to deal with loss of faith, right? People who don't know how we got here. Do you want to deal with fragmentation of meaning? People who just are confused, they don't know, how to tell heads from tails. Do they want to deal with people that are disconnected from culture and from history, right? Who don't even know, like, who's the president? I don't know if people saw like Jay Leno's jaywalking. I mean, people don't know a lot. Do they want to deal with the rise of individualism, right? People who don't believe there's any universal church. Or do they want to take up the cause of family and have big families and show that to the world? Do they want to deal with gender confusion? People know if they're male or female. Do they want to deal with the growing rise of mental health and social instability that's a byproduct of all these? I'm going to tell one little story here. I did actually a Western Canon Great Books program. It's typically what it is, the Western Canon, the Western literature. But I also did a master's in Eastern Great Books, so I've done kind of the whole world. And I have a lot of Chinese, Korean, Japanese friends. And I'll just speak to kind of the family issue. I have 11 kids. Back then, I was at USF. I think I had 4, maybe. But this young Chinese girl calls up on a landline, and she asks if she could come over. And so I asked my wife, I don't remember her name now, can she come over? And she said, yeah, sure. So she comes up, rings the doorbell, comes up the stairs of our flat, opens the front door, walks past me and my wife Kathy, walks into our bedroom, and just goes back like that on our bed. She laid on our bedroom, on our master bed, and she said, I just want to breathe this in. And then she got up and left. So you never know the impact you're going to have on people, right? So she grew up in a society that almost has experienced this already, right? They were there earlier than America. We've just caught up. And just normalcy, meaning, people who know what they're doing, right? She didn't even say what it is. She just wanted to breathe in something, right? And we never saw her again. So, and I didn't really know her that much. So it's weird. You never know the impact you're going to have on people. A couple of people have thanked me for converting them. Like, I barely know you. Like, yeah, but I overheard your conversation once, and then I thought about what you were saying. It made sense. So education has always shaped civilization. It's the number one thing that shapes civilization. That doesn't mean just institutional education. Mothers and fathers are primary educators of their children. It always has, it always will. It's time to reclaim this. Truth in an age of relativism, goodness in an age of beauty, truth in an age of relativism, goodness in an age of depravity, and beauty in an age of despair. So I'm going to skip, I think I'm probably out of time, right? I'm going to skip one just to the very end. The number one question, do I have to wear a bow tie? The answer to that question is if you can pull it off. Thank you. Want me to take questions?
Yeah, do a Q&A.
Okay, cool.
Okay. We'll do questions, Q&A for a while. Anybody have any questions you want to address to John?
What is the tuition?
Just round it up. Did you hear that?
Yeah, tuition?
Yeah.
At Chesterton, 8,300? 8,500? 8,500.
It's 8,400.
8,400. Split the difference, 8,400.
That's next year.
Yeah. Yes.
The Chesterton Academy Bowl, their fundraiser had, they raised $288,000.
Yes.
Or whatever. How do you guys compare them as far as fundraising?
Steve? Steve's here. You can answer the question.
I didn't hear the question. Can you say that again?
What's our fundraising goal for this year? I think we're having our gala in two weeks from today.
The goal for the gala is $500,000, and that's a portion of the entire year's goal, which is we have to raise about a third of our annual operating budget. 2/3 of it comes from tuition.
And how many people are going to come to the gala?
1,200 or more. I mean, there's a lot of people interested in seeing the kids who are the hosts.
Yeah. The part that I just skipped at the end, those were. It's like, is it real? And I had a number of quotes from the kids, right? Their personal impact. When you see these aren't perfect kids, but when you see a young couple, 2 freshmen dancing, right, and looking you in the eye and greeting you and having a great conversation with you, you do really believe that, like Father Steve said at the end of that video, that there is hope for the future, right? It's going to come from the youth. Yes.
Are you hiring and can I give you my resume?
You can give the resume to Brenny over there. Brenny Bowles. Yes, Madonna.
Thank you, this is really marvelous. But in this day when you hear about the rising rates of teenage suicide and depression
Yes.
and illness, I think one of the most characteristic features at the school is the pervasive joy. It came through on that video. How do you think the classical Catholic education contributes to that joy?
Probably need to summarize it for the video.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, so Madonna asked about, given kind of the rise of mental health and suicide among young people, and you see when you go into a classical school, often you see the opposite. You see joy, right? You see healthy teens. What's driving that, right? So that's typically the first question I ask when I'm interviewing people. Why the joy, right? So I get various answers. I say the most common answer among our kids at school is we start every day with Mass. 5 days a week, 8 a.m. Well, not always 8, but there's Mass every day. They say beautiful things. So like one kid said to me a couple weeks ago, that's like 180 people with Christ in their heart at the same time. Like, wow. Like, oh, that's cool. You're a freshman. I think also there's some homogeneity there, right? They're all Catholic, so you feel comfortable around your own people. You can let your hair down. I think that I've heard answers that, the teachers want to know my opinion. They truly want to know what I think about an issue. Because, you're reading Dante, but it's not like necessarily what did Dante say on page 40. It's like, what do you think about that, right? Do you think that kind of punishment? Why do people who have that sin suffer that particular way? And as humans, we're all able to answer that. It's not a fact thing. It's not like you're testing them for content. You're testing them just to use their soul, use their brain, use their heart. I would say also joy is contagious, right? And it's a parent-led movement. Everyone's in it. It's a family movement. We all clean. Kids are cleaning the school. The parents are showing up to coach. You ever know when you may need to be the scorekeeper or even maybe the coach for a day. Who knows? I would say that's a number of the reasons.
I have a question. You're talking about the tremendous growth of these academies. How do you control that product, if you will? How do you regulate the extent to which somebody has to follow certain criteria to become a Chesterton
Okay, got
Academy?
it. Okay, that one probably don't need to summarize, right?
No, try.
So there's in the case of Chesterton Academy, it's like a franchise model, right? So there is a curriculum that's developed for all the schools, even daily lesson plans for all the courses. And there are a number of workshops throughout the year where people go and they learn how to teach the Socratic method. There's master teachers within the network, so it operates in many ways just like a regular company with a franchise model. And that's true of other networks. Great Hearts is a large network, probably the largest. They're in, I think, 4 to 6 states now. The Hillsdale K-12 program, I don't know the name of it, but that's also a growing network. So there are a number of these that are doing it independently, but a lot of these, probably the majority of these, are actually part of a more organized model.
Yeah, Steve.
Thank you, John. Can you speak to kids coming from a Dewey-inspired model to Chesterton, junior high or in the high school, or even a Catholic school, big Catholic school, into that environment?
Yeah, so we have a number of kids. Every year we have 1 or 2 kids speak at the Galen. We've heard those stories. So, sorry, the question was, can you describe kind of that transition for someone coming from more of like a John Dewey model to a classical model? So a lot of kids will say, I remember a young girl, Angela Mykrit, who said that she was even afraid to let anyone know that she was Catholic. She was at I think, Lyon Township High School in the Grange. And there was just this, like, she couldn't be herself, or she was afraid to let people know that she was Catholic. She had no one that she could talk about her faith with. That's not necessarily Dewey per se. And then when she came to Chesterton, she was overjoyed that she could just be herself. She could not only express her faith, she could learn her faith and see it modeled for her. Another thing that kids say, which is probably more apt to your question, is just the integration of the curriculum. The kids love that, right? That they say things like, I'm learning the same thing in all these different classes, and it's sinking in, right? It's this focus, this sort of deep, penetrating focus on these big questions, right? Questions that are eternal. And I think some people do miss electives. There's people that leave the school because maybe they know their child wants to be a computer programmer, and some public school has like a computer programming track within it. I mean, I think those are fine choices for people to make. It's not, like I said, I think it's not just like there's one model. Probably more classical schools would have more enrichment programs if they were bigger and were more funded. That's not to say that those types of vocational courses don't matter. But yeah, I would say that's probably what I've heard on that.
Anybody else? Yeah, maybe one more.
Are y'all concerned at all about the negative impact that House Bill 2827 could potentially have on Chesterton should it pass the House?
Yeah, I'm not an expert enough on that, but my wife could answer that question for you. But anyone have any thought on that?
What the bill is.
Yeah, can you describe the bill? I know I've heard of it. My wife's talked about that.
So it's a bill that has been put forth in the State House, and it's actually a movement around the country. So it started in Virginia, and we're kind of ground zero with states looking at us. And it's ultimately an attack on homeschooling freedoms, but in Illinois, it's non-public schools, which is private schools, homeschools. And it's a non-funded mandate, which is going to require a lot of a registration, mass registration bill. So it's going to require a lot of work on the part of the local schools to go after the private schools and the homeschools to make sure the kids have these portfolios and they're registered and they're essentially meeting state standards. So, I mean, the financial toll that will take on private schools and resources, right? So, is kind of a big deal. I mean, it's not just a homeschool issue.
Yeah.
Could I meet with you after this luncheon and we could talk about that? Because I had not heard about that. That sounds horrific, but it also sounds
So
like
we have a member of ad hoc here.
okay, it sounds like a terrific organizing principle to push back against.
We need to.
Those
Because
kinds of-
the bishops aren't doing anything. It's
Well,
gonna-
there you
it's gonna-
go.
It's gonna impact
There you go.
everybody.
The laity has to do it. And then the bishops will get in line maybe. Not in front, but in back. Any more questions? No, really, I'd like to hear more about that. Any more questions? I'm going to just very briefly describe. We try to keep ahead 3 luncheons with our speakers, and we have. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the next 3 we have. On March 14th, we have Father Burke Masters, a pastor at St. Isaac Jogue. Apparently, is he still the chaplain for the Chicago Cubs?
Yes.
Okay, so that's who he is. He's a great speaker, and that'll be March 14th. On April 11th, we have a podcaster and author named Sarah Kane to talk about the ongoing kerfuffle with the Vatican regarding immigration and J.D. Vance's radical statements and so forth. And then on May 9th, we have Francis Mayer, who is very well known to many of you, talking about reasons for hope in the church. He came out with a book last year called True Confessions, Voices of the Faith from a Life in the Church. And he has not lost hope. So if any of you need to be reinforced, I urge you to come to that luncheon. If you have not signed up for our emails, please, there's some forms on the table on your way out. Please sign up. And anything else you can do in the way of finances or otherwise are always welcome. Thank you very much.